and welcome back to our next episode of the Hormone Café. Today we're going to talk about menopause. We're going to talk about what is menopause, what are some of the symptoms, when do you get menopause, and what do you do about it. So what is menopause? When we think about our whole life, when we first are born, we're not making enough hormones to have regular cycles. And then sometime in our teenage years, our brains get developed enough that they can talk to our ovaries, and then we start making hormones. And sometimes when we start, it can be a little bit irregular. For those of us who know, we've had a bit of irregular cycles in our teenage years. And then eventually our body gets into a rhythm and a flow where our brain is talking to our ovaries, and our ovaries are making hormones cyclically every single month. And then eventually, as we reach our 40s, we go into perimenopause, meaning that talk between our brain and our ovaries is a little bit more erratic, and our ovaries are making hormones in a little bit more erratic fashion. And then eventually, our ovaries stop making hormones so high that we have regular cycles. Our ovaries are still making a little bit of hormones, but not enough that we're getting regular cycles. So technically, the definition of menopause is that you haven't had a period in a year. That means you're in full-blown menopause. Your ovaries are only making a little teeny tiny bit of estrogen, but not enough to trigger a cycle, an ovulatory event, or a period. So perimenopause is that transition between regular cycling and menopause, when we're going from making hormones in a cyclic fashion to making no hormones at all. So when we're in menopause, we are not cycling, we're not having any periods anymore at all. The average age of menopause in the United States is 51, but it can vary by about 5 to 10 years. So some people go through menopause when they're in their 40s, and then some people go through menopause when they're in their mid to late 50s, meaning they don't have any periods anymore. So really true menopause is your body is not making enough hormones to have cycles. So when we think about menopause, the things that can cause a lot of problems is your body going from having a lot of estrogen to not a lot of estrogen. And so the symptoms of menopause can be things like hair loss, hair thinning, brittle nails, thin skin, thermoregulation issues like feeling really hot or feeling really cold, having a lot of night sweats or hot flashes, having a lot of insomnia, so difficulty sleeping, feeling like you have a ton of mood changes, like suddenly feeling really, really irritable, or just feeling like, oh my gosh, it's not me, having a lot of fatigue, having a lot of metabolic issues, or a lot of unwanted weight gain. We're eating the same thing, we're working out, and we still can't lose weight. Those are some of the symptoms that we think of that some people can have when they go through menopause. So one thing that we have to know about menopause, it's a natural transition. It's something that we all go through. Every woman goes through menopause, so it's not a bad thing. Everybody goes through menopause. It's not a bad thing. It's not something that necessarily needs to be treated or fixed. However, everybody goes through menopause differently. Some people have horrible symptoms, and they have horrible insomnia, horrible night flashes, really, really bad brain fog. Their metabolism is really, really off. And some people don't have any of those symptoms at all, and they transition to through menopause really gracefully, and they just say, what are you guys talking about? I don't know what you're talking about. I feel fine. So you just have to realize that every woman transitions into menopause completely differently. Everybody's symptoms are different. Some people get one symptom, some people get a bunch of symptoms. So it's really important not to compare yourself to anybody else. Just know your body, know what's normal, know what's not normal, and know what it needs. So the first thing to remember is that menopause is something natural. It's not something that we need to treat or cure, or that's something bad. However, menopause can come with a lot of symptoms that can be really debilitating and really affect our life. So what I really, really want you to know is if you are having a debilitating symptom, we should help you through that. And I don't just want you to suffer and power through. So sometimes people come to me and they're exhausted, they have horrible brain fog, they can't remember anything, they're getting horrible sleep. And even though they're going through a natural transition, there's a lot of things that we can do to help that transition be much healthier so you feel really great. Because I think a lot of menopause symptoms just get chalked up to, oh, you're going through menopause. Oh, you're going through menopause. However, just because you're going through menopause, it doesn't mean that you have to feel bad. You can still feel amazing, just as amazing in menopause as you can before you were in menopause. So please, please, please advocate for yourself. I want you to be empowered to make sure that you feel great every single day and that you don't just chalk up all your symptoms to being in menopause. So let's go through some of the symptoms that people feel in menopause and what we can do about it. I also think that you have to be careful. For example, taking hormones can be really, really helpful. It can be life-giving. It can be rejuvenating in menopause. We just want to make sure we're giving your body the right hormones in the proper doses because we don't want to cause blood clots. We don't want to cause cancer, things like that. And also sometimes people only focus on hormones and they don't focus on all the other things. We're not focusing on nutrition, metabolism, adrenal glands, gut, thyroid. So if we're only focusing on hormones, sometimes we require a ton of hormones in order to feel better, or we take hormones and we don't feel that much better because we haven't focused on all the other things. So if you have a lot of menopausal symptoms, let's talk about some of the goals that we have and some of the things that we do to treat them. So one thing that I see commonly is insomnia. People having a really hard time sleeping, they're waking up in the middle of the night, and oftentimes that can be associated with hot flashes or night sweats. And I want you to know that I want you to be feeling good and sleeping amazing 5 to 6 nights a week. Sometimes we can't get the symptoms to go 100% away. Like you might have a hot flash here or there, or have some insomnia, or wake up in the middle of the night, but it really should only be once or twice a week. It should not be more than that. So if you're having a hot flash every single day, or you're waking up sweating and you're soaking the sheets where you can't fall asleep, or you're waking up and you're wide awake in the middle of the night, that can all be a menopause symptom that we need to make better. So when we think about insomnia, there's two really major things, I guess 3 major things that really trigger that. One is our glucose. So one thing that I often have people do when they're going through menopause is do what's called a continuous glucose monitor. So I have them wear a little monitor on their arm continuously for weeks at a time because I really want to see what your blood sugar is. Why is that so important? When we're going through hormonal transitions, we need to keep everything else stable or we'll feel those effects of the hormonal transitions much more acutely and much stronger. So for example, if we're having these humongous blood sugar fluctuations, that's going to contribute to humongous hormone fluctuations and we're not going to feel well. So in order to stabilize our hormones, we need to stabilize our nutrition and our blood sugar. So when we're looking at our blood sugar, we never want to be too low. So we never want to be hanging out in the 50s and we never want to be too high. So we never want to be higher than 140 and we want our blood sugar to be a straight line all day long because every 10 years, for example, we have a metabolic shift. So when we turn 30, we have a little bit of a shift in our metabolism. When we turn 40, when we turn 50, and 50 is a huge shift in our metabolism. So sometimes we have to change the ratios of what we're eating and change the times because it might not be what you used to be able to do. For example, a lot of times in menopause, we have to eat a lot of protein and not as many carbohydrates because carbohydrates can help trigger those increases in our blood sugar, and that can contribute to a lot of mood issues and anxiety issues and insomnia. So when we're thinking about sleep, I always have people check their blood sugar because we want to see when do you need to eat, how much protein do you need to eat, and is blood sugar getting high or low affecting your sleep? Because if you're eating at night and your blood sugar is really spiking and your blood sugar is high all night long, then we need to make sure, are we nourishing your body with enough protein to keep your blood sugar steady? Otherwise, you will wake up in the middle of the night and your hormone changes will make that much worse. So blood sugar is a big one. You really, really want to focus on your blood sugar. We always want to have an average glucose of less than 100. It's a little bit personalized on the person, but that's something that you want to learn about your body. The other thing that we think about when we have insomnia is anxiety and cortisol levels. So we'll often measure people's cortisol and see if it's getting high, because if your cortisol is really, really high right before you go to bed, then it can be really hard to have you sleep. And also cortisol will suppress your estrogen production, and having low hormones can also make you feel that you have fatigue and make you feel unwell. So a lot of times people right before they go to bed are just thinking and thinking, and they have this tired but wired feeling. And so we want to check your cortisol levels, because if you have really, really high cortisol, we need to take actionable steps to bring your cortisol down. So we need to be really, really diligent about our bedtime routine, for example. We need to have no blue light 90 minutes before we go to bed, no screens. We need to have a cool down and calm down routine where we take a warm bath and use lavender essential oils and really use that time to transition our brains into sleep mode, because we literally need to retrain our brains how to make melatonin in proper amounts and cool down your cortisol levels. It's really, really important to have that bedtime routine so we can literally train our brains how to go to sleep. And then we want to have things that we can do to prevent those anxious thoughts that are running through our head, that we can manage them or journal them or find a way where they're not keeping us up. So we really want to make sure that there's not like anxiety and stress that's contributing to our insomnia. And then of course we want to check your hormones, because if your hormones are really, really low, or they're going really, really high to really, really low, that's going to contribute. Those shifts, those dramatic shifts in your hormones are going to contribute to a lot of hot flashes and a lot of night sweats and insomnia and sleep issues. So then we can use things like bioidentical estrogen, bioidentical progesterone, bioidentical testosterone to really help you transition through that time. So when we're thinking about night sweats, we want to think about our protein intake, our blood sugar levels, our anxiety and our stress, and our hormone levels. The other thing that we want to think about is our thyroid and our adrenal glands, because if our thyroid is really, really off, if we're not making enough thyroid hormone or we're making too much thyroid hormone, that can lead to a lot of thermoregulation issues like feeling extra hot or extra cold, or really going between those two quickly. If our thyroid is off, then it can make that much worse. So yes, it can help to take bioidentical hormones, but we also want to make sure that we're not missing any of the other things, because we want to make sure that your thyroid is optimized so that you don't have those significant of like hot flashes and night sweats. So with all things, we start with nutrition, right? Are you eating enough things in proper ratios where we're keeping your blood sugar low? We're not making it too low, but not too high. We're not spiking your blood sugar, and that you're literally getting enough nutrients to absorb the nutrition that you need in order to make estrogen and progesterone in proper amounts. So that's also important to look at your stomach health and your stomach acid and your stomach lining and your gut health, because if you're eating well and it's not getting absorbed, then your hormones are also going to be extra low unnecessarily. So we look at nutrition, and then we look at your exercise profile. So are you exercising in the right amount depending on your hormone profile? For example, if you're really low testosterone, I need you to be doing weight-bearing exercise. If you have bone density issues, or you tend to have osteoporosis, osteopenia, fragile bones, you have a history of really low estrogen for a long period of time, you're a low estrogen profile person, then you must be doing weight-bearing exercises. You have to be lifting weights. You have to be building or maintaining muscle mass. And then you also, depending on your hormone profile, want to be doing a little bit of cardio so that we're keeping our heart healthy. But we don't want to be working out so intensely that we're just burning off our hormones and feeling exhausted and fatigued. So we really want to make a nutrition plan and an exercise plan where we're optimizing your hormones, where you can feel really, really good and not have some of those side effects. The other things that we sometimes feel in menopause is a lot of brain fog and a lot of kind of mood shifts and anxiety. So that also goes back to our cortisol levels, right? Is our cortisol really, really high? Do we need to be doing things to bring our cortisol down? Is it high at night that's causing insomnia, or is it high during the day or in the morning? And then do we have the right metabolism of estrogen and the right ratios? So we want to be checking your estrogen in your blood, and sometimes you want to calibrate that with either estrogen in urine or other types of estrogen like E1 and E3, and make sure you have a good balance of all your different estrogens, because sometimes you'll need bioidentical estradiol in certain ratios in order to help you clear up that brain fog. Another thing that we want to be doing is making sure we're clearing all your metabolic pathways. So if you're taking estrogen, but it's not showing up in your bloodstream, or it's not showing up in your urine, maybe you're not metabolizing it properly. So we want to look at your entire body system, right? How's your gut? Are you having a bowel movement every day? Are you constipated, or do you have diarrhea? How's your liver? How's your kidneys? Are you drinking enough water? So we want to make sure that those metabolic functions are contributing to having healthy hormone metabolism, because otherwise that can build up and cause us to have a lot of brain fog. The other things are energy and fatigue. So that also goes back to protein. And then we really want to have a specific nourishment and nutrition plan because, for example, in women of childbearing age where we're cycling regularly, you really don't want to be doing intermittent fasting because you're not going to get enough nutrition to train your body how to make hormones in proper amounts. However, sometimes in menopause, that can be a time where we do need to have intermittent fasting because our metabolisms have slowed down and we need those fasting windows in order to rejuvenate our mitochondria. However, most people, when they're doing intermittent fasting, they tend to skip breakfast, but that is really going to mess up our cortisol because we actually make cortisol the most in the morning and then it goes down throughout the day. So if we're completely skipping breakfast and then eating only lunch and dinner, and that's what we're doing as our intermittent fasting, that's going to really slow down our metabolism because we're not nourishing our bodies when it's designed to be nourished. If anything, we actually want to skip dinner because that is when our body wants to calm down. Like we really do not want to be eating right before we go to bed. We really need to move up our dinner or have a fasting window at night so that we can really calm down our cortisol levels. It's just really hard because in American culture, breakfast isn't very important and dinner is really, really important. So not that you have to eat no dinner, but if you're doing intermittent fasting and if that's what is good for your metabolism and your hormone profile in menopause, then you actually want to make sure you're eating breakfast and then eating lunch and then eating a really small dinner or moving up your dinner earlier in the day as part of your intermittent fast and not skipping breakfast. It's really, really important. And then, so we do need to be nourishing our bodies. We need to be getting the right ratios of nutrients. We need to be watching our protein to carbohydrate intake because a lot of times we actually need a lot more protein and a lot less carbohydrates. And then we need to be making sure that what we're eating is very pure and very basic. I call it a primal diet. So we don't want to be eating any artificial sweeteners. So no stevia, no monk fruit, no erythritol, no maltitol, because those things can really affect the metabolism of our hormones and contribute to brain fog. So our nutrition is extremely important, especially in those menopausal transitions. So we're eating in a way where we're balancing our hormones and feeling really good and keeping our blood sugar flat and supporting our mitochondria, sometimes with fasting windows and sometimes not. We can really personalize that to your body. And then we do need to be exercising and we really need to be making sure that our bones are healthy and that we're maintaining muscle mass so that we actually have some testosterone and estrogen production. And then we also want to be drinking enough water, that we're clearing our hormones properly and that we're flushing our kidneys so that we're not getting a lot of brain fog. So when we think about a lot of our menopausal symptoms, it seems a bit overwhelming, but we really do need to focus on all the different body systems and make sure they're all optimized because I want you to be feeling amazing even in menopause. I do have to say it will be harder. Like you'll have to work much, much harder. Sometimes people hit menopause and they just feel like their whole body is broken and that everything is wrong. And you do have to work at it a little bit. You're not going to be able to get away with all the things that you used to be doing in your 20s, 30s, and 40s. Like it is true. You will have to make some changes. You will have to change some things about the way you eat. You will have to change some things about the way you exercise. You might have to take even more supplements. So if your body's not resorbing supplements as well, or your stomach lining is off, or you aren't eating as well as you used to, like we do need to work harder on those things. But once you get those things locked down, you're going to feel amazing. Yes, you're going to have to work harder, but it's just a transition. And in all transitions, we have to make changes, right? So when we transition into a teenager, we have to make changes. When we transition into having regular cycles, we have to support those. When we transition into having less estrogen, it does come with a lifestyle change. Like if you're not feeling well, you cannot just continue to do what you've been doing. It's not going to work for you. So if what you used to do is no longer working for you, then you really, really need to do a deep dive and figure out what is going to work for you and legitimately make a change. So for example, if you used to be a person who exercises really, really hard and that's how you kept all your weight off, and now you're still exercising hard and you're gaining unwanted weight, then we need to reevaluate. Like maybe you're actually exercising way too too hard for where you are in your stage of life. And that's just really, really stressing out your body. And when your body's stressed, it holds on to weight. So maybe we actually need to be looking at your protein, your fat, your calorie intake, and look at your exercise and maybe back down on some of your exercise, add a little more fat or a little bit more protein to really strengthen your metabolism and make sure that you feel as amazing in menopause as you did at any other time in your life, or better. I have some people who come to me and they're in their 60s and they say, oh my gosh, I feel amazing. I feel better than in my 60s than I ever did in my 40s, because they're really paying attention to their body, what they need, and they made some changes to make sure that they're really optimizing for things in this new stage of life. So there's lots of things that we need to look into. We need to look into your hormones and maybe bridge you through with some bioidentical hormones to make you feel amazing. We got to look into your sleep, gut health, nutritional status, blood glucose, thyroid, endocrine system, and make sure all those things are optimized. And then we optimize your nutrition, we optimize your exercise, we give you a supplement profile tailored to you to make sure that you're really feeling excellent every single day. So if you're in that menopausal transition, please make sure that you're advocating for yourself and that we're doing what it takes to feel great every single day. And just know it's going to be a lot of work at first. I'm going to make you do a lot of things. We're going to do a lot of homework, but then in 3 to 6 months, you're not going to need me. And you're going to say, great, I know I feel amazing. I know what to do to balance my hormones and my blood sugar. And we just check in every couple of months. We check your hormones. We make sure you're on track. We have a plan to eventually wean off hormones, if that's part of your plan. So the whole goal is you figure out what you need in this specific stage of your life. We tailor it to you, and then you're empowered with that information to know what you need for months and months and years to come. So if you're hitting that menopausal transition, please let me know. We'll look at all the different body parts. We'll really figure out what you need, and we'll make a tailored plan to you so that you feel amazing every single day. Thank you so much for joining us, and please join us for our next episode of the Hormone Café.